At CDW, we get speed as the new currency of success.
Our team spends way too much time tending to outdated applications and software when they should be focused on driving application agility and innovation.
CDW Amplified Development Services modernizes software and application development to help accelerate innovation and digital transformation.
So you mean building new applications, UI, and mobile interfaces?
Well, you said you needed to innovate more quickly.
Oh, so he's a listener.
To do more at scale, trust CDW Amplified Development Services.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
Some carriers will give you just one measly entertainment subscription. One is no fun. With Verizon, there's up to 7 entertainment subscriptions with your unlimited plan. That's 7 times the... 7 times the... No. 7 times the... Music, gaming, Disney+, Hulu, ESPN+, and more. That's 7 times the entertainment! Because everyone deserves better.
And with plans starting at just $35, better costs less than you think.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Today is the 19th of April 2023. I got on my Wave shirt. We all value. If y'all in the metro Atlanta area, I need to jump on the bandwagon and ride the wave. Black men get together and we go to schools and we help our young brothers, the young men coming up in schools, to try to keep them on the right path. Everybody needs to be doing something. You know, y'all keep saying if you ain't part of the problem, you're part of the solution. I mean, if you ain't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So this is what we do to give back to try to keep them from keeping us gainfully employed. We try to help them as best we can. They do toy giveaways. They do lots of things to keep giving back to the community. They take donations, but we out in the streets all the time. We stay in these schools. It's where I'm doing my mentoring. It's just where we doing big things. Jason K, Brandon Roberson, Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis is a big fan. She comes out and she talks to the kids. I saw her speak for the first time a couple of weeks ago. She's a hell of speaker. I must say I was impressed at her level of realness that she kept the conversation. I can say when she was talking to these at-risk kids, she was not politically correct. And I think that resonated with some of them. So they didn't have to just sit there and listen to all the things that people normally tell them insincerely. All right, so it's 19. I'm hoping I get a couple of guests because we're going to go ahead and talk about a couple things. I got a couple of notes. And I've been on a couple other shows and people will ask me things. But we'll get into that after the break. So what I want to do is do my monologue. And I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. This show is not the political show. But again, look at who's doing what. Look at who is saying one something and doing something else. Look at who is lying to you in your face and daring you to call them out. If you don't know, Fox just paid out $787 million. It's far from the billion they were sued for, and I would have liked to see it go to trial. But Fox paid out because they were lying, because they lie, because that's all they do. And you see people being real quiet now. They being real quiet about calling everybody else fake news when now the fake news had to pay a cost for being fake news. They admitted they lied. They admitted how much. I mean, they got tapes and transcripts where they knew Trump was lying, where they knew the election wasn't stolen, where they knew all of this stuff, but they went on with it because they know they got a stupid audience. Ain't that something? But I know y'all think that's fake. They just doing it. You know, the Illuminati kicked up again, and all of a sudden they want to take over Fox. But that's neither here nor there. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna make this about some law and order, because with all the things that have been going on in the system lately, y'all still not getting it. And some of y'all still don't understand the difference between speaking factually and speaking emotionally. And we just keep getting caught up. And if you're religious, I applaud you. But I just want to know, how long are you supposed to keep praying? I mean, we've been praying, and we've been praying, and we've been praying. And let me pull up my calendar right quick, because I want to hit y'all with something that I found utterly astounding, amazing even. And it ain't many things that fall under that category. Oh man, I need to see what day of the year this is by value. Anyway, marinate on this. We've had more shootings than we've had more kids killed in mass shootings in schools than we have days of the year. Just marinate on that. So let's just do a quick round thing. We're gonna say every month has 30 days. That'll balance them out. So this is the 4th month. So we're closing in on 120 days. We've lost more than 120 children to mass school shootings. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. And we'll secure everything except kids. I mean, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and we're gonna get into the show and talk some we're gonna talk some legal issues. So we'll be right back, and y'all know what it is. Let me get me a drink.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never, ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for mental health and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org.
It's been difficult because I hadn't been able to see my grandchildren.
An expression on someone's face when you do something nice for them.
I miss all my friends in school.
Visit GetVaccineAnswers.org so you can make an informed decision about COVID-19 vaccine.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
Can I get the Nauber, please?
$1.
Have a good one.
Got it.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Let me get an out bar.
Sure. $1.
Appreciate you.
Got it.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Whether it's advice on managing your anxiety or tools to help you stay grounded, Coping-19 provides a range of resources and self-care tips to help you cope with this pandemic. We can help. Find the resources that work best for you at coping-19.org.
Stillman College is an HBCU in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where we prepare students for a different world. Stillman is a college of distinction for last year and this year. Our largest majors are business and biology, followed closely by psychology, criminal justice, and history for pre-law, communications, English, and religion. Our newest degree programs are in the Department of Computational Sciences, which covers cybersecurity, data analytics, and math. The Biomedical Academy prepares students for competitive entry into health professions and graduate programs. We have established summer biomedical research internships with major research institutions, such as the University of Alabama, Drexel and Temple Universities in Philadelphia, the Salk Institute in San Diego, California, and the universities of Florida, Indiana, and Iowa. We became creative with social distancing and masks for the pandemic. Our students enjoy movie nights at the stadium and the new Melissa and Davis Legacy Courtyard, where you can eat and enjoy friends. We have the Divine Nine Greek letter organizations, student government leadership, and ambassadors. Our small class sizes, nurturing faculty, and friendly environment let you know that Black Lives Matter at Stillman College each and every day. Applications are free. Sign up at discover.stillman.edu. Complete the contact card and apply today. Stillman College, where we prepare students for a different world.
This is
All right, so we back. All right, now, I talked to a few people this week, and I keep trying to get people to understand when you're talking about certain things, you need to speak in an area that makes sense. And sometimes you have to make people rise their level up because the conversation won't make sense when you're talking to people who could be agents of change. And the thing is people, they don't like, people want to say cops generically. And let me just say, I always try to correct them because all cops are not created equal. We're not trained the same. We don't know the same things. There's a huge difference between police, sheriffs, and marshals, and everybody doesn't know the difference. So when you just say cop, and I get what you're saying, I do, but the cop you're talking about may have no clue as to what you're talking about, and inherently we all think they know the same things, which is why sometimes we get frustrated by them because we want them to do something that they're either not legally obligated to do or that they've never been trained to do. What's up, Devin? I'm proud of my black kids and my black. Hey, that's what it's got to be. But you know, we got to start earning their pride and make them get it. So, one of my guests is being slow coming on, but he coming. So when I start talking about police and sheriffs, especially the training, the objective, the constitutional obligations are different. So I'm gonna start off with sheriffs because my guest is he worked for the police. A lot of things have been going on with sheriff's departments lately. Sheriff's department have two major responsibilities. Two, constitutionally. One is the county jail. Let me change fingers because that looked obscene. The first thing they're responsible for is the county jail, period. The second thing is state court and superior court. Those are their responsibilities. When they fight crime, that's a bonus. But they have two duties. Sheriffs are elected officials. The only somebody who can remove a sheriff is the governor. The only somebody who can arrest a sheriff is the coroner or medical examiner. Go figure. But they're supposed to do two things, especially when they're charged with keeping the county jail. They have a constitutional obligation to make sure that all inmates are kept safe and secure. This is the job of the sheriff. It is his job to make sure that everybody who is assigned there can do just that. When that's not done, something needs to be done. Here in Georgia, we've had a sheriff or two who has been indicted. All these start with the governor. Inmates and prisoners both have rights. No matter what they're in prison for, no matter what they're in jail for, they have rights. You can't starve them. They have to get so many calories per day. They have to be afforded so many calories. If they don't eat, that's on them. But we have to put out meals that give them X amount of calories. You cannot deny them certain health care. You cannot deny them certain things. Most prisons, most jails don't do a lot of dental care. They will pull a tooth. There ain't no fixing it. There ain't no capping it. It's just cheaper for them to pull it. That's the baseline of care that they have to give. If you have a tooth that's messed up, pulling it is all that's going to happen. They're not going to maintain your braces or none of that stuff. Well, they can, even if you can pay for it, most of them ain't doing it because it's just not what they do. But here in Georgia, we had an inmate who died by death by bed bugs, which is insane. Insane. I checked with a couple of my medical professionals. They said it could happen, but it's highly unlikely for them to die by death by bed bug. It would take the person being in a bed, not moved, not being checked on for an extended period of time, which theoretically in a county facility in a county jail, that cannot happen. For instance, our jail and most jails I know, they do 3 head counts. For head count, you have to get up, you have to be standing. The deputy is supposed to see you or the correctional officer. And they check it off. So I'm not sure how an inmate can lay there long enough that this ain't happening. But I do know how it could not be done legally. So everybody will say, well, the deputies ain't doing their job. The deputies ain't doing their job. Well, minimum requirements are 2 deputies per floor, 1 in the tower, 1 on the floor. Sometimes this minimum required is not met. Then you know what the deputy standard order is? Do the best that you can. So if there's only 1 person on in this area, they have to be in the tower so they can open doors for medical emergencies and whatnot. But they don't do a real count, even though they could. But who knows what they're being taught? But they don't go in the zones anymore because it's just them by themselves. Deputies also have a right to be in a safe and secure environment, even when they work in jails and prisons. So if I go to work and I'm assigned to a floor and I'm the only person there, I don't go in and do visual checks. Now, what I should do is make everybody walk by the intercom and tell me their name and their booking number. I can do that. But what happens if somebody doesn't do it? What do I do then? Therein lies the question. So it is inherently possible that it could happen. That means there's some mismanagement going on, because the jail should not ever be that short-staffed, because there's also a provision where they can force you to work overtime in the event that there aren't enough officers who come to work. Even OSHA covers this. So there's no long-standing behind this. They can make us stay. Some departments choose not to do this. Who knows why? It's not my responsibility. I'm just telling y'all, these are the things. So you can't keep saying it's this, it's this, it's this. When you want a problem fixed, if you have a leak in your bathroom, having 20 electricians won't fix the problem. You need to get a plumber. You need to get a qualified plumber. You hire them based on something that you read or that you believe, or maybe even a recommendation. And where do you go from there? Depends. But it goes back. If something goes wrong, you still go to the company who sent the plumber, because they are vouching for the plumber's credentials. When something happens at the jail, when something happens at the courthouse, it is the sheriff's responsibility. When police do something wrong, it is the police chief responsibility. That was my link. That wasn't my clue. So when we look at certain things, inmates not being released on time, inmates being held too long, inmates being arrested, yada, yada, yada. These are things that are management created. We had a female officer who was found to be having oral copulation while on duty. And everybody rushed to blame her. I ain't taking no blame away from her. She shouldn't have been doing it. But how was she able to do it? Where was her supervisor? Because remember now, there's a minimum of 2 people on the floor, supposed to be. And there's supposed to be there's supposed to be at least a supervisor. There's supposed to be at least a supervisor. So if you take Fulton County, which is one I got the most knowledge of, and they have 13 floors, 7 on one side, 6 on the other side, so that's 13. In an 8-hour shift, it should be possible, it's easily doable for one supervisor, actually 2, to go up and down both, because if you only spend 10 minutes per 13, that's 130 minutes if you spend 10 minutes with each one, which is a little over 2 hours. So even if there's a problem, you got time. Clearly, this is not happening like it should be, or these things would be known. So if you lock the deputies up, then what? That's even less staff, Robert. So you create a bigger problem. And if you're locking them up, then what do you do with the supervisor who ain't doing their job? See, this is one of those times we go for the low-hanging fruit and we never eliminate the problem. See, a bad company can keep hiring bad servers, but you keep going and you keep getting them because the company is hiring bad servers, but you ain't never attacking the company. You just keep going after the low-hanging fruit, the most easily replaceable component. Change comes from up top. Change don't come from the bottom. It comes from up top. But nobody wants to attack up top. They keep wanting to attack the bottom. Why is that? Because that's what we're told to do, and we fall for it. And this is how we fall into the system of constantly being at the back of the bus because we don't even know what it is we're looking for. We're complaining about the wrong thing. You'll get deputy after deputy after deputy after deputy. Man, it's still going on. You still got the same head. So what would change? There's nothing to change because the same head, the same management is there letting the same things go on. So why would something change? Why? You didn't create change. You just created something different. That's a minor change. But you're not creating positive change because you're going for the low-hanging fruit. It's kind of like having a flat tire. You can put any tire on your car. Is it a tire that will make your car run efficiently, or is it just a quick fix? You put a donut on there, you're not going to drive that donut for the rest of the year. So we can't keep blaming the easy portion. Who hired these deputies? Who are training these deputies? Who is overseeing these deputies? This is how you learn who is who and what's what. So when you talk to certain people, you can't tell them what you can't tell them to answer the way you want to be heard, because nothing is going to happen. Because I can answer you like you want to be heard. I can't tell you how to fix the problem, because you have to understand where the problem occurs. See, sheriffs, for instance, are elected officials. If you don't know what to ask the elected official, they can give you a whole song and dance about what they're going to do, and you don't know if they do it or not, because you don't know what their responsibility is. So how do you know who to hold accountable? Because you want somebody to do something and you think it's this person when it's not. It's not. So blame the deputy. And then what? How many deputies have we locked up? See, remember in DeKalb County when the sheriff was assassinated? Now, he was assassinated by deputies. Who got locked up? But they locked up the sheriff who coordinated everything. He was the one who was doing the directing. He was the one who was doing the supervision and management. It was him. And he had a long-standing history. But everybody just let him get away with stuff. And nobody wanted to go after him. Same thing with Victor Hill. Everybody wanted to blame somebody else. But somebody's responsible. Who's responsible? Who is responsible? This is where we have to understand what is going on and how to fix it. This is where we have to understand what we need to speak on. When you have people like the Ben dude, and they saying this and they saying this, some things truly are racial. Some things truly are negligent. You got to know where that line is. We can have inmates die in our facility. Most jails are minority. The majority of the population is minorities, which is why a lot doesn't happen. Because the wrong person is in jail. And that's just fact. You don't see a lot of these problems in some of the city jails because all of them are not, they don't have racial overtones. So in some cities, you get this, in some cities you get that, but in the county, you get a lot of us. And I see my guest here, Joe, and Joe is way more experienced than me, and he was a police officer, which is why I wanted him, because we can explain some of the differences. Because there's some things I'm gonna say about police and police chiefs, but I've never been one. I just know some of their responsibilities. And Joe, having reached a high level of management, can speak more correctly. He can speak from a knowledge base. I can speak from an opinion base about what should be happening. And one of the things, Joe, did you see have you seen the thing about the guy who died by death by bed bugs?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, at the Fulton County Jail.
I've heard about it, but I have not seen it.
And to me, that's insane. And I was telling a couple people, this ain't the first death. This is like the 12th one. And don't get me wrong, people, whatever your religion is, do what you do. But how long are we going to keep praying for things to get better? And we're going to hope this, and we're going to keep saying what happens in the dark comes to the light, and let so-and-so take care of it, and so-and-so take care of it. And Stanford saying we got to destroy before we rebuild. No, because you can't destroy them. You just need to fix them. You just got to fix them. And the fix for sheriffs ain't that hard. And the best example I can give you is I just introduced y'all to Joe. Joe's from Chicago. Joe is a police officer. Let's just say DVP gets to be sheriff. So I can bring Joe in as my second, because there's nothing wrong with bringing somebody who you know and trust in as your second, because you want that. But I can't, what I should not do is bring Joe in and put Joe over to my jail. Joe has no experience running jails. And as a police, I'm not sure what his experience would be in running a court system, which is what the sheriff's responsibility is. Now, if I want to do a street suppression unit, I would say, yeah, I want to go to Joe. Police inherently know more about street suppression stuff than sheriffs do. But a lot of what we see is people bringing people who are unqualified for the job, but this goes unchallenged and unchecked. So I got Joe in the jail. Joe don't know what he's looking for. Joe is at the mercy of everybody who's up under him who may or may not like him. And the problem with destroy before you rebuild, Stanford, is if I get rid of everybody who is my enemy or I perceive not to be something, I'm getting rid of a lot of the experience, which is what I think police do. Because I work for an agency and I'm looking. You got to be 21 to be a cop because that's what you got to be to carry a gun. So if you go to mandate at 21, how are you a sergeant at 23 or lieutenant at 25? What experience do you really have? But all the older people are gone because they're being forced out. And there's nothing wrong with bringing in new thinking. And this is where I want Joe. At some point, you have to have the experienced people who know how to handle certain situations because crime doesn't change. Criminals don't change a whole lot. So if I bring in some guy and in 2 years I make him in charge of something and he has no experience doing certain things, I'm setting myself up for failure. And more importantly, I'm setting my constituents up for failure. Joe, what you got for me?
Some of that I agree with. You know, I'm going to come at you. So
I know that's what I want you here for.
So I will say this: the difference in experience level of a sheriff and a police officer are really not that different if they're good at what they do. Let's just stop. Let me just say that. I've seen sheriffs that transition to patrol, and that's where you get the sheriff's police because a lot of municipalities, if you're in a county, you have to be in the jail before you can become a road officer, correct?
No comments yet.
Okay, all right. Well, be that as may.
But let me say something before you go on right quick. The biggest, and I'm saying the biggest difference is most police don't know civil matters like sheriffs do. Sheriffs, we get a lot of civil stuff because we do the courts. So and that's the biggest difference. Most sheriffs don't know anything about accident reconstruction, and anything that's dealing with accidents because that's just something that we're not trained for. Well, police don't get a lot of civil matters. They don't have a whole lot of training on TPOs or what to do with court papers. That's just not their job.
Two different
it's
systems.
Our responsibility.
I
that's what I'm saying. The difference with police and sheriffs are not the chief and the sheriff, but just the deputies, the working class. But go ahead.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, again, as you so eloquently pointed out, the difference in what sheriffs do and what police do. Again, municipal codes vary, and the county has to know the varying municipal laws. I mean, the county is bigger than a city, so a lot of people don't know their civics, but that's a fact. In fact, if there were to be a takeover of police departments, it would start at a county level, and then go state and then federal, if that were to happen, because cities operate in a county. Now, civics 101. That being said, I agree to a large extent because you guys do more of the court side of it than we do, that your experience on that level is definitely far outstrips ours, no question. Now, when we get back, as you said again, to street suppression, getting down to the finer points of patrolling, I think we got you beat there because we have, by and large, more to come in contact with. You look at our call logs of any municipality within a county, and you'll see the difference in them. Now, do county officers back up those smaller municipalities? Oh, there's unincorporated areas, certainly, but they base it on what the county law is, not that municipality, not the other way around. Going back to this, I've read about the death by bed bug thing, and I was quite intrigued because for life of me, I've never heard of it.
Don't go down that rabbit hole, Joe. Don't go down that rabbit hole.
I never heard of it. I mean, didn't mean it didn't happen. I just never heard of it. But I think that when we were conversing earlier, the idea of what's the next phase is really intriguing. And I think that's the question that goes across the country. What is the next phase for us?
And the next phase, unfortunately, is a consent decree. And I think consent decrees are great. Unfortunately, who brings about consent decrees? Inmates, because they have to complain about the conditions. And in one of the conversations I was having, this is one of the questions that should be asked of your county leaders, your sheriffs and police chief. What are you paying out in illegal search and seizure, unlawful arrest, detention, all that stuff? This is a direct reflection of your taxes. They don't want to ever tell you about these things. And I know firsthand these things go on. I know that people have been held in jails, in county jails illegally, and because they are low income people, they'll give them a $20,000 payout. Some of it comes from a general fund, some of it comes from insurance. But insurance only pays their portion, then the county got to start kicking in. There's a budget. As Joe was saying, this is why some sheriff's department, they do back up local law enforcement, because every local law enforcement legally, from my understanding, Joe, operates with the permission of the sheriff, because the sheriff can pretty much regulate where you want to go if that's what they want to do. They had that fight in Henry County when the sheriff said any Henry County police who got caught outside of the city limits, he told the sheriffs to arrest any police officer outside the city limits, because they were having a battle, they were having a power struggle. And the Henry County police chief realized he couldn't win that one legally. But the sheriff has a distinct, like I said, the sheriff, the jail, and the courts are his. It's theirs by Constitution. Street crimes is something else. And street suppression, it's just any unit that goes out to fight crime. That's their job, whether it's a Cobra unit, a Scorpion unit, Red Dog, whatever they want to call them. Those are street suppression units. Their job in totality is to target high crime areas to help bring down crime. Is that a pretty fair description, Joe?
I would have to say it is.
That they go to high crime areas?
Yeah, and they give them, when I came down there to look over some things, the names that the acronyms they use are not very smart in my opinion, but they do the same thing. Yes, from Scorpion to whatever. Here we had the Jump Out Boys. We had SOS, which was Special Operations Section. Also known as Sons of Supervisors for obvious reasons. But however, can those units function legitimately and righteously? Yes. But we've had this discussion on many shows, and particularly you and I. The fact of the matter remains that leadership is key, plain and simple. I mean, if we look at the military, how they have teams, how the teams are broken down, same way, that's why they're called paramilitary operations. That's why the police operations are so-called paramilitary. I said so-called, brother. Don't get insulted yet. Because they should operate in somewhat of a military frame set, from discipline to operational. And what you find, one of the things you just talked about, let me just digress for a second. The consent decrees. If you've read any of the consent decrees in the last 6 years from Chicago, New York, LA, even Florida, two things jump out. First of all, they talk about the span of control. Span of control. And they also talk about one thing that's overarching everything. All of them open up with, there's a problem with racism. Now, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight, but the one point I wanted to bring up was that they also all talk about the span of control. Well, what's wrong with the span of control? Well, if you look at what happened in those guys down in Memphis, what they did to that young man, again, what did they talk about? They talked about, where are the supervisors? What was the problem with control? And if you go back and read these consent decrees, it answers those same questions. There is a problem and we're not addressing it. And until we address those issues, we're going to have this anomaly happen again.
And that's why you don't have to blow up the system. You just got to change the structure of it, because there is a lack of supervision and management. Yeah. You can't keep giving somebody something and you don't train them. And not only do you not train them, you don't follow up to make sure they understand the training. One of the things I learned from when we had to do in classes that we big on as a supervisor or manager, I'm supposed to explain something to you. Hey, this is a new policy. This is something I started doing in every class I did. We have a test immediately after so that I can test your understanding, because the law says I can tell you every new update we got. But if you don't get it, it's still my fault. So I got to test you, and I got to keep a record. So when I teach something new, Joe, do you understand this? And Joe going to sit there and say, yeah, because that's what all officers do. I'm going to give Joe a piece of paper, and we're going to have a pop quiz on what the new stuff is. So Joe either passes or fails. If he passes, he can no longer say he doesn't understand. If he fails, it's my job to retrain him or remove him. See, it ain't Joe's it ain't Joe's fault that he don't get something that he's never been gotten. And we keep going for the low-hanging fruit, but we never go to the planters of the fruit. And this is why we continuously have these problems. Everything that happened in the go ahead.
But you just said, let me just say this, brother, in your honor, I have to give you this. Not that I'll give you a lot of good shots. You just described the educational system in the country. Believe it or not, that's the whole mode of education. I give you the idea, you not necessarily regurgitate it back to me, but you show me you learn by answering these so-called questions. That's exactly what education is based on. So if we take that and we apply that to policing, what's wrong? What aren't we doing right? And I will tell you again, it goes back to the instructor, leadership.
Mm-hmm.
A good leader will be a great instructor, plain and simple. A great leader is just that. But the other thing when we talk about these problems with these departments, and it's system wide, and I think you know what I'm about to say, but I just say it anyway. Most of these departments, when they were designed, first of all, let's understand that policing started from slave hunting. And I know we're going down the rabbit hole, but I'll make it real quick. Most of these departments were founded on the backs of slave hunting. So who do they put in charge? Now, moving in today's modern era, you will find that a majority of the supervisors get rich off being patrolman, being sergeant, being lieutenant. But if you look at how blacks are promoted and look at how whites are promoted, where they go during that promotional process, you will begin to understand how this thing works and why it's functioning at its least functionality. And before anybody else says it, it is functioning the way it was designed.
And we don't listen to people. And I don't want you to think that I'm overinflating us, but I can tell you stuff. Joe can tell you stuff. I've listened to that dude being taught. He's never given a viable solution on fixing a problem. He can keep telling you, oh, shopping wild blacks. He can tell you all these things because they're headline fillers. But he don't ever tell you how to fix the problem. He never comes up with that. So you can keep telling me what's wrong, but if you don't give me a solution, because tomorrow when I wake up, I can't stop being black. Joe can't stop being black. So if that's all you keep telling me, you're trying to scare me, because there are ways to fix this. And I've talked about this over and over again. You can fix almost anything in less than 30 days. I was reading an article about the lateral vascular neck restraint. We don't teach it here. It's illegal in most places. It's a sleeper hole for those of y'all who understand what it is. And I was reading an article by a police guy who said they should bring it back. He quoted some stats. He didn't say where he got them from, but he said when they got rid of this lateral vascular neck restraint, officers' injuries went up 500%. Injuries to perpetrators went up 600%, because now you got to fight these people. And he's trying to make a point, and people are agreeing with him that we need this chokehold again. And I'm just like, I'm confused because, from my understanding, I was a sheriff, Joe was a police. When it's life or death, you do what you got to do. But there is no need for me to ever put a person who is not risking my life in a sleeper hold. So why would I need this on my tool belt for a person who is simply saying no? That confuses me. And it's a whole big thing with training. I would not train, and take my word for it, I'm an excellent trainer. I don't train a lot of people on stuff because I don't trust them. Because when your adrenaline gets going, I can show you the proper technique. But we're in a controlled environment. When you got a little stress going and you got a little strength going because you got adrenaline going, that sleeper hold becomes a choke hold because you are collapsing the throat now and not the carotids. I've seen people do this under stress because they don't realize that they're getting that adrenaline dump. The training ain't going to override you using extra pressure, and you don't even know it because it's adrenaline pumping through your system. But I'm listening to them try to explain why we need to have that chokehold back. And I'm like, wow. And do y'all use the chokehold in Chicago, Joe?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. The vascular neck restraint?
No. And believe it or not, one of the places I worked in recently, the mayor was actually ahead of his time. The mayor in a place called Harvey, Illinois. He had outlawed the chokeholds long before it was mandated that we shouldn't. But I can't see this reformation of the chokeholds. I mean, I just don't see it. But
and Joe,
in terms
do me a
of
favor right quick. They want to know your credentials again right quick.
let's see, 30 plus years in homicide.
I know your whole credential list will take about 26 minutes. So just give them the clip note version.
30 plus years in homicide in Chicago. I was a commander of special functions for CHA Police Department, heavy weapons instructor. I hold a master's degree in finance. I hold a BA degree in criminal justice. I am a graduate of Northwestern Command School. I've written numerous grants. I was a cold case detective. I wrote the grant for cold case in Chicago. And I'm also an adjunct professor.
So between the two of us, I mean, we have a wealth of experience, and I think that some problems are easily fixable. That you don't need to destroy them, but what we need to do is have standardization. Like I said, I learned the LBNR, and me and Joe will call it a chokehold, even though technically it's not a chokehold. It is a sleeper hold, but it becomes a chokehold when an officer panics or when he is using it because it becomes inappropriate. It's the same reason why in the South we got rid of that knee on the neck. Is putting a knee on somebody's neck effective? Absolutely, because if you can't move the head, you can't move the rest of the body. But what we found out was that I can't stop you from putting pressure on his spine. I can tell you how to hover your knee, but under stress, you're not gonna hover the knee. You're not. You're gonna put that weight on his spine or on his head, which makes it a red light area, which means it needs to be lethal force. Now, I have taught special students who showed proficiency in maintaining a level head. I have shown them several techniques that I would not teach the average line officer because they've shown me that they can't control that fear factor or that adrenaline dump. So I won't teach it. So if I can't teach it at all, I won't put it in my general course. But there have been students that I pulled and had them because, hey, these guys have a control thing. They don't use it. They don't use it because they're scared. Because I hate that line. Technically, we always scared, but they shown that they can control it. And I hear what the guy was saying about the ladder vest. I heard what he said. I got it. But the time it takes to teach it. Again, Joe is a policeman. I was a sheriff. We ain't had this conversation, but I would bet. Joe, did y'all do annual in-service training?
Allegedly.
Was there anything more consistent than going to the range? We go to the range every year, every single year. But we never, in 22 years, I never did in-service that revolves around defensive tactics. But every year we go to the range. Every year we do CPR.
I don't disagree with you. In fact, I would tell you that we spend more time, probably not enough time on the range, if you ask me, for some other reasons. But that's another show. But as far as in service, the problem, again, the way they get away with this is that they use the acronym that will deploy it online as opposed to bringing the student in. Now, understanding that the adult learner is different than an adolescent learner is mistake number one. Mistake number two is thinking that law enforcement, A, is going to clean its own act up. It's like telling Hollywood, hey, you know those films, you just go ahead and you put the rating on them. Don't worry about us. We'll let you. Don't worry about the R rating. Who cares? But I would say that telling officers to not have being grounded in the law and saying that we can deploy this over long distance just doesn't meet the rubber doesn't meet the road in this instance, particularly in non-law enforcement. I mean, think about it. If lawyers have to go and do CCEs, funeral directors have to do CCEs. What stops law enforcement from doing CCEs? I never understood that.
Well, and I can tell you this: this is strictly my opinion. The reason that we don't do it is because management is so concerned about call-ins. When I started doing in-service, and I have my own fitness for duty form. So I require you to do certain things because I was taught instructor liability. So if you tell me that you can't do certain things because you have a bad knee, because you have a bad back, because you're pregnant, because you got the flu, whatever, I just make a note of it. So when I require you to handcuff a suspect who's on the ground and you tell me you can't get on the ground, when I require you to show me how you strike this or do this, I ain't stressing. I just put not fit for duty based on my assessment. Management can do what they want to do. You know what they say? They say, Bill, can you stop using that form? Why? Instructor liability. If they come to my class and I say they did everything, well, we don't want that because, well, why you let them work? Because if they're telling you they're not fit for duty and they told me, if something happens, you're going to ask me why I didn't tell you. And I based this off a case that I read in Pittsburgh where a patrol sergeant had a heart attack chasing an escaped inmate. The family sued the police department and they won because he was fat, overweight, and out of shape. And he should have never been allowed to work because there's no such thing as light duty when you're in a uniform. But he was there, the inmate escaped, he gave chase, he's fat, out of shape, on medicine, had a heart attack. The family said, why'd y'all even let him come to work? Well, we need the bodies. So management doesn't want to put you through high stress. To take one of my classes, we do high stress because that's the only way I can tell if you're learning. And then you get used to it so it becomes second nature, which is why we suck at shooting. Every shooting we do is a controlled environment. Every shooting that we do. When I went to a class, they made us run 50 yards. I don't know if y'all know how long 50, but you got to run. And then you got to shoot at targets with a balloon blowing in the wind. You have to shoot. You have to shoot. But they give you stress. They cut the lights on the cars on so you get used to the flashing lights. They cut the sirens on so it's hard to hear radio. They put you through a stress test. I learned this to be most effective for weeding out applicants who were not ready. Well, what happens is I got rid of a couple of Joe friends because they weren't ready. They do good on they do good at the video arcade. They can play the zombie fighter game and they score on 1,000. But when you add a little stress to it, that 50-yard run cut out most people. Most of them don't want this. And remember what I told y'all before. I ain't seen not one bad officer who didn't have a trail before he became bad. There was a trail. He had already exhibited bad behavior. Very few of these officers all of a sudden pop up with the worst behavior. They've been doing this for a minute.
Well,
and Joe talked about supervision. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let me jump in. I'm glad you brought that up, because that also leads us down another rabbit hole, and that's called whistleblowers. Now, I can guarantee you that within every department has got at least one bad apple, but somebody knows who that bad apple is. Now, the question becomes, will the person who knows tell? Overarching answer is no, for a couple of reasons. One, because there's no protection for them. Two, there's no reason for them to tell, because it puts them in the limelight. Again, because I believe you were talking about, you said we were going to talk about solutions and problems. Well, here's a major problem. But now, if you go look at the FBI website, if you go look at the Coast Guard of all people, Coast Guard website, they have almost a 30-page document on whistleblowers protection. Now, tell me why law enforcement doesn't have that. I know why, but I am on
Right, you know why. And it's crazy. Like, there's a couple of guys here, and I told them, everybody wants the line officer to tell something. And I'm going to stay behind this from a sheriff perspective. I worked with people that I didn't know had an issue until somebody whispered in my ear, but who knew was a supervisor. And they was like, well, go work with him. But they don't have to tell me why somebody's with me. But somewhere, when a civilian filed a complaint, somebody knew. And it was in not a personnel folder, it was in a personal folder. And these things don't get forwarded from supervisor to supervisor. So they don't get into the personnel file that everybody can see. But it's there. And no, everybody doesn't know who the bad apple is. And this is one of the things that I can't make y'all understand enough. Bad apples don't do stuff in front of good people.
Correct.
They won't do it. Unless they got the numbers. And then they try to intimidate them. But if they don't have the numbers, they're not going to do it. They have their own group. It's funny, when I watch shows like The Shield or some other shows, I can honestly relate to them, because I've been put off a couple of street suppressing units because I was like, yo, my nickname's Serpico. I'm telling, I ain't scared of none of y'all, because you can't do certain stuff in front of me. And, I tell you, I testified in 3 cases where police were doing something that was, I can't even say question, it was illegal. I can't be a part of this. Well, you can just move. You're right. I don't mind leaving, but I'm going to write a statement. That's all I can do. But ain't nobody going to do it, because when everybody see me, they be like, they go, Bill, straighten up. So they let me work by myself. And so we keep saying that everybody knows, and I'm going to stick to this. More civilians know, but they lie to themselves and say nothing can be done, so they don't tell. Every case I testified to, civilians came to me first and told me, so I knew what to look for. Other than that, I would have had no clue. The people that they named to me blew my mind. I was like, there's no way. I said this in my head. But when they started giving me stuff, I could research it, and I was like, ooh, damn. Why didn't y'all tell somebody else? Oh, man, y'all always protect each other. Well, y'all should see that's not true. We don't know. We don't know. See, I'm going to speak for Joe. Joe know when he works when he works with a bad cop, that increases the chance of him getting hurt. Good cops very rarely get hurt when they're together. But when you put me with a bad cop who's doing suspicious and shady shit, people think I'm with him. They say we're the same. So that's that myth I want to truly dispel. But what I want to do right quick is, I was telling y'all, these people leave a trail. And when the George Floyd thing came up, and I told you, I did a little quick research. It wasn't that hard. Derek Chauvin had 20 complaints of aggression. 20. Several of them were about that knee on their neck. Several of them. Under this new police chief who was doing the Kumbaya thing, he was the one that promoted Chauvin to training officer, which in effect is a supervisor. So consider this. I'm working with an officer who is violent and aggressive and does something that's questionable, but the police chief promoted him. What does that tell me as a new officer? See, Robert, when you were talking about doing what's right, I can think I know what's right, but I'm looking at a guy who I think he's kind of aggressive. He's promoted. Now he's a trainer. He's a trainer. This stuff is in his file. Now, I might not know what in his file, but when he put a knee on somebody's neck and he said, I'm the trainer, this is what we train to do, I'm supposed to believe him because I'm using Joe now as a boss because Joe got higher in command than I did. Joe told me he was in charge. So if I believe Joe is a decent guy and Joe put me with a suspect, officer, what am I supposed to do? Mel, can you get ready to run the George Floyd tape? Not George Floyd, I'm sorry, Derek Chauvin tape. And this is the craziness. When I say there is a track record for most bad officers, there was a track record for Batman, there was a track record for Reebok, there's a track record for most bad officers, especially when they make it to the news. The lady that shot that the guy in the truck, she had a track record. The one in Dallas, she had a track record. Very few of these are first-time incidents. You ready for me? You ready for me, Mel? Or you want to take a break first? All right, go ahead and play it.
2 excessive force lawsuits against former Minneapolis police officer and convicted murderer Derek Chauvin for more than $8.8 million. Chauvin is currently in prison for killing George Floyd after putting his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. Years before that murder, 2 other citizens in Minneapolis complained Chauvin had used the same kind of force when he detained them. They survived and sued the city. I spoke with one of those citizens, Zoya Code, in 2021.
My name's Zoya Code, and I'm all I got. And you will not take my life. Like I told you, they will not take my life.
She says she complained to the police and they didn't do anything. CNN's Natasha Chen has more details on this case and settlement. Natasha, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Sarah, the Minneapolis City Council yesterday voted unanimously to settle these 2 lawsuits, ultimately awarding John Pope $7.5 million and Zoya Code $1.375 million. These 2 incidents happened in 2017. After the settlement yesterday, the 2 people, through their attorney, decided to release body camera footage of what happened. And we're going to show you some of it, and I have to warn you, it is disturbing to watch. We're going to start with what happened with John Pope, who was at the time 14 years old. Here's what we're seeing as police are responding to a domestic call.
Get on your stomach. We're in my own house. You hitting me? No, please, Sean. Get on your stomach now. No, I'll explain to y'all. What'd I say? Put your back now. I'll explain to y'all.
Do not kill my son, please. Please, do not kill my son. Mom, don't kill my son, please.
That's very difficult to watch and hear. You're seeing Chauvin kneeling on the back of Pope's neck, and according to the lawsuit, that lasted for more than 15 minutes. In the earlier clip, you saw Chauvin hit Pope with a metal flashlight, and the attorneys say that these 2 cases, Pope and Code, are strikingly similar, and they say that Chauvin was using his, quote, signature move with the knee on the neck. And what we're going to show you next is a clip from Code's incident, where police were also called to her house for a domestic incident. And again, this is going to be disturbing to watch, but what you will see is Chauvin dragging her out of the house and attorneys saying that he gratuitously slammed her unprotected head to the ground. Here it is.
Lift me up, you weak? You strong enough? Ow! That's how you gonna slam me on the ground? That's how you gonna do me? Just like all the other black people, huh? Just like the rest, huh? We're gonna be dead.
I'll bring it up.
Dead as ever. Dead. I'm gonna black out. Let me turn my neck around too. I can't breathe.
And according to the lawsuit there, Chauvin kneeled on her neck for more than 4 minutes. Chauvin is currently serving more than 20 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. The mayor of Minneapolis said yesterday that he should have been fired in 2017 because of these incidents. If the supervisors did what they were supposed to do, the mayor said, George Floyd would not have been murdered.
And now you get my point, is when we keep talking about the system and all of this, the system, you can't blow up the system, and you can't keep getting rid of the line officer. This man been doing this. Every clip you saw, he was going to his go-to move, which is that knee on the neck, which I told y'all, I'm sure he didn't just come up with that. You saw how easy and smooth that transition was. And if I'm being honest, as a trainer, the efficiency that he did it with, that was second nature to him. He was good with it. He put that knee on the neck. He didn't strike nobody. He didn't do nothing. He was cool and calm with it. And in this whole Derek Chauvin and George Floyd thing, y'all notice who didn't get in no trouble? The academy didn't get in no trouble. The police chief didn't get in no trouble. None of his supervisors. All this is documented. This was on tape. They got body cameras. Somebody should have been watching this. Somebody should have been watching this. With this and all them complaints, he still got promoted to training officer. Now we're gonna take a break. I see Mo is here, and I want y'all to just marinate on what y'all just talked for 2 or 3 minutes, and we're gonna come back, y'all.
This is Carlos Brown, letting you know that we're on the move. You can now catch the Carlos Brown Show beginning this July on the Black College Sports Network each and every Saturday from 11 to 1 Eastern Time. That's 10 to 12 Central Time. Same time, new place. On Facebook at the Carlos Brown Show and Black College Sports Network, online at www.mybcsn.net, and on the BCSN app, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
This is Ryan Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Bounty versus the old family dish towel. Drying with a fresh sheet of Bounty leaves your hands cleaner than a used dish towel that can carry and redistribute food residue. So ditch the dish towel for better hand hygiene. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they want to tap, I'ma do the dab, yeah.
Shop Velvet Online Women's Boutique to spice up your closet with trendy, unique looks. We have fashionable and chic looks at very affordable prices. Velvet Boutique offers free shipping all year long on all orders. Shop online at www.melvetboutique.com. That's www.melvetboutique.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Shop Velvet Online Women's Boutique.
For 5-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine. If it doesn't have this yellow tag, you don't want it.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds. You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
Follow the Black College Sports Network and all of our shows on YouTube. You can find us at MyJBN Online and on all social media at MyBCSN1.
At CDW, we get speed as the new currency of success.
Our team spends way too much time tending to outdated applications and software when they should be focused on driving application agility and innovation.
CDW Amplify Development Services modernizes software and application development to help accelerate innovation and digital transformation.
So you mean building new applications, UI, and mobile interfaces?
Well, you said you needed to innovate more quickly.
Oh, so he's a listener.
To do more at scale, trust CDW Amplify Development Services.
All right, so we back, and like I said, when I found that clip about Chauvin, it just agitated me because I keep telling people most of these things are done, and I'm a big fan of civilian review boards. I'm a big fan of making these things public. What I'm also even a bigger fan of, because I told you guys before, these unions make it so easy for me to commit a crime here in Georgia, quit my job, go to Chicago or go to Arizona or even go to the next county and get another job, because the system says once I quit my job, the investigation is over with, so I can keep my certification intact. And since there was never any investigation and I quit before I became under investigation, I can get a new job. Now I got Mo and I got Mo and Joe here. You know, Mo is here to answer us questions because he writes books about us and he has the best questions. And you know, me and Joe do our best to answer some questions and try to tell you how we can get to some possible solutions. But until training is pushed to the top of the envelope, and training is always the first thing to go whenever there's a shortage of manpower or shortage of money or shortage of anything, when they ain't got enough free lunches, training is the first thing to go. So you keep getting a more educated officer, but you're not training them for anything. You get a more educated officer and you put him with a Chauvin or somebody who's been in the system so long with a bad record, they don't know right from wrong because all they know is who's getting rewarded. The pay ain't the issue. When you take a job as a cop or a teacher or any type of public servant, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because that's what's in your heart. People don't become soldiers to get rich. It's just what they want to do. If you're doing it for the money, you'll never be an effective officer. But you see Chauvin. You see how the department got away with it. And I was so amazed that the police chief didn't have to take the fall for that. They said he shouldn't have been a police after 19 or 17? And he still was. And he was still a training officer. He was a training officer. He hitting people with flashlights. It's on tape. This ain't an accusation. Mo, did you see him swing the flashlight and hit somebody?
I sure did.
Joe, you saw it. Joe, you're a police
Yeah.
officer. I'm gonna defer to you. When is hitting somebody with a flashlight acceptable?
Never. That's why you
I would
have a
say,
baton.
yeah, we can use it as a baton in emergency, but I didn't see nothing in there that warrants it being hit with a flashlight or a baton or anything.
No,
I didn't see anything that
I agree.
amounted to where they need to use force.
I
So
agree.
there was nothing in that. There was nothing. Somebody saw this video and said, go forth and sin no more. 20 write-ups. He ain't got no suspensions. What does that tell the next officer? When he sits there and he can say, well, I've been doing this and I got promoted. What does that tell him? This is what we get.
But again, brothers, I think we've talked about it, and I'll say this again. Those people exist because the system is working the way it's supposed to. Prime example. I don't know if you read about this guy named John Burge here in Chicago. John Burge, even though he's dead, was a highly decorated commander, but he most of the convictions are now being overturned because of allegedly Burge's tactics. Now, a little background: Burge was a Vietnam veteran. So was my family, a veteran of World War I, II, Korea, and all that. But some of the tactics he brought back were not, let's just say, condoned by law enforcement. And a lot of convictions have now been overturned because those people that were involved in the manipulation were his proteges. Now, here's the problem, and listen real close when I say this. The difference between us and them is this. We have to play by the rules, plain and simple. And if you don't want to play by the rules, don't be the police. It's easy for people or law enforcement officers to get in and say, "Oh, that's not fair." And well, man, that's the rules of the game. I used to tell guys, I'd have to run up on different situations as a homicide detective, and these guys are chewing their weed, and I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm not the weed police. I'm here to find out who killed so and so. I don't care what you do with the weed." But the fact that we have those type of guys that bury themselves behind the badge makes the ones who are good look bad. And the prime example is this, particularly for people on this board right now. You know what I'm about to say. If one of us does something wrong, guess what? They all bad. I don't know if you saw what happened in Chicago over the last weekend. We had crowds of youth rolling downtown. They were doing all kind of craziness. What do you think the boards were saying Monday? Those people. Now, none of my kids were down there. None of y'all's kids were down there. And I doubt that any of your relatives were there. But because of the stigma, your kids are now going to be stigmatized as what?
Those people.
Your people.
Bingo.
And it's what I want people to understand is the system was created for them. There's no getting around that. But if we stop being afraid, because as you see now, there are lots of undercover whistleblowers. There's a reason a lot of these tapes are getting out now. It ain't because the departments are releasing them. Ahmaud Arbery, luckily, somebody who cared released that tape. Somebody, because it should have never made light of day.
If it hadn't, the boys would be walking free now.
They would be walking free right now.
Yeah.
So there is a whole movement, and you'll be surprised at how many of us, and I mean law enforcement people, who find these things, and we know how to release them to the media. There are some of us who have media contacts that we can give stuff to, and they won't say anything. There is a shift. It's slow moving, but it's a shift. It's better than what it's ever been before. And like I say, I'm here in Georgia. We've seen lots of cops get convicted. Yeah, we had a sheriff we got 2 sheriffs now who gone to jail. And I want to say it's more than that. But we done had 2 sheriffs go to jail. I'm sorry, 2 sheriffs go to prison. The system ain't what it was. But without help from the community, there is nothing. When that video got released from Memphis, Tennessee, I guarantee Memphis didn't want that video to get out. You just can't tell me they wanted that video to get out.
I agree.
That video got out. And woo, that video caused chaos. See, the unintended consequences. Firefighters lost their job because they have a duty to respond. And I tell people, guess what? Just like with, what's the guy name who got beat in California? Rodney King. The white lady didn't go to jail. It's the one her job to shoot them other cops, but she got on her radio and she got on her CAD system and started typing what was going on. It's the only reason she avoided prosecution. It ain't her job to fight. It ain't my job to stand in front of a bullet to uphold justice. It is my job to let somebody know that something is amiss. I need help. All the firefighters had to do was say, hey, we need a supervisor here because these police won't let us do our job. That's all it would have took. They didn't have to call no names or nothing. The system now is if you ain't doing your job, you're going to get caught now. We have to adopt this, and as black people, we got to quit saying what won't happen because that's the biggest weapon that bad law enforcement got. Would you agree, Joe? Would they believe that we're going to stick together? Joe can't keep a secret he don't know. D can't keep a secret he don't know. If you run to Mo and tell Mo ain't in law enforcement. Quit telling your friends. Find somebody you know. People will call me and ask me for stuff. I'm going to tell you the best way I know how to get it. A lot of these tapes, the craziest thing is you can do something as simple as an open records request and pay $7 and get the DVD. It's just that simple. They trust you as civilians to keep complaining and not try to come up with a solution. Because these bad cops, some of them ain't even trying to hide it. They depend on you believing that we all gonna stick together. And I'm gonna stick to what I said earlier about Joe. On the road, me and Joe feel safer with people, with coworkers who are safe. Because if I'm with a bad cop, people assume I'm a bad cop. I don't want to be with a bad cop. I'd rather be by myself. It's safer. Because they ain't gonna say, oh, you with him. Oh, you with him. I'm by myself. So the system was designed for them. Things are changing. But you can't keep letting these leaders tell you BS to keep getting them money. Now, how much did George Floyd family get?
Ooh, not enough.
And I ain't gonna go down this rabbit hole deep, but look at what George Floyd family got, and I'm gonna try to see if I can find it right quick. But then look at what that white woman's family got who got shot by the Muslim officer in Minneapolis. She got more than George Floyd got. You see, they gave $7 million to somebody who had his knee on their neck and they survived. Being Trump is a fraud, ladies and gentlemen. He don't ever give you solutions. He don't tell you how to overcome the problem. After the George Floyd, before Derek Chauvin went to court, Minneapolis all of a sudden outlawed the knee on the neck. See, it don't take but a minute to change policy. Policy can be done within 30 days. It take a minute to change laws, but there's no law about knee on the neck. Policy can be instituted just like that. Just like that.
Well, let me interject that. It's interesting because the postulate you're putting forth is really twofold. What you see happening in police work is exactly what we should have been doing anyways, called accountability and responsibility. And the third one, consequences. Now, if we take those three things, we're addressing the ills of society. If we just take those three things alone, think about it. You're now telling police officers they got to be accountable for their actions and others around them. There are consequences for your non-action. Okay? So isn't that what society is about anyway? But we got away from that somehow. We let that slip through our fingers because of these so-called, and I'll say this, Negro leaders who don't fail to exhibit any of those qualities, at least in my mind. Now I can be wrong, but I want you to show me one within recent history that has all three, a minimum. And the Floyd settlement was 27 million.
Yeah, I just looked it up. And and the crazy thing is, and we're gonna get you in a second. One of the things I learned to start teaching about deadly force, and the guy said, "You can't teach that yet. It ain't law." I said, "I teach what I want to teach." We teach cops that before they use deadly force, they have ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. But I learned in one of the better classes I went to, preclusion. And the guy said, "Well, what's preclusion?" I said, "Just because you have a gun in your hand and you're doing this and doing that, well, technically I can shoot you. If I'm telling you to drop it, but you won't drop it." Preclusion is once his elbow starts to bend or he starts to turn toward me, it's just another 0.26-second effort, because I want y'all to quit shooting people just because they meet ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. We're cops. Most of the time we go to a call, ability, opportunity, and jeopardy is there. Let them do something. The preclusion that gives you peace of mind when you shoot them. Let them give you that. And it's like, why you want to teach them that? I said, because it just makes sense. It just makes sense. Just because a man has a gun in his hand and I'm stupid enough not to stand behind my car and I need to tell him or talk to him for whatever reason, I shouldn't just shoot him, but, oh, well, he could turn the gun and shoot you. Or I could get in my car and get the hell on. But he needs to do something. Because, Joe, you've been in this longer than me. When did saying I'm scared become a reason for us to shoot? Mo can use that excuse if I'm not mistaken. Your wife can use that excuse. My wife can use that excuse. When can police use being scared or even in fear of their life? When is that a legal reason to use deadly force? Because it ain't in none of the classes I teach.
Well, now I only part of that I have a problem with. I'm scared does not work. Absolutely does not work. I fear for my life. I think we did a show on that once, and that's a catchphrase. That's a catchphrase.
But where did it come
Why
from?
do you feel? Well, again, it's a reaction that someone came up with, said this is a way to quantify and qualify using deadly force, and it's not, because there's nowhere in our teaching curriculum across this country where you have to articulate why you took the action, but it's part of it, not the sole reason for firing or using deadly force. And let me say that you just can't say I'm in fear of my life. You have to say I'm in fear of my life because of, if that makes sense.
That ain't what that woman in Dallas said. What, she was in fear of her life because dude was eating ice cream on the sofa.
Well, now we talked about that before. That was a white woman. You think a sister would have got away with that?
So you can't eat ice cream in front of a white woman?
Look, I just asked a question. You think a sister could have got away with that? Do you think you could have got away with that?
Go on and ask a question.
All right, man. I got some. That's crazy, man. I ain't eating ice cream no more. Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate that, man. Hey, listen.
Hold on, Mo. Before you get there, let me just do this right quick.
Go ahead.
For those y'all who remember, now, Joe just said George Floyd got 27 million, right? The woman who was shot running into the police car, the one that didn't get the knee on her neck and get it filmed, her family got $20 million. I just want y'all to consider that when y'all keep talking about what Ben Crump is doing. She got $20 million for not suffering, for running into a police car. I ain't saying she should have got shot, but hers makes a little bit more sense. They got $20 million and nobody heard a word. The world saw George Floyd die in real time. I mean, not real time, but they saw George Floyd die. His family got $27 million. $27 million. But a white woman who got shot and died just like that got 20. That's all. Go ahead, Mo. Ask us your questions.
All right. Well, first, so let me do this. All right. I'm the people, and Joe and DVP. Yeah, I'm the people. Joe and DVP are there are experts right now. So I got some questions. I'm gonna speak for the people. I'm gonna ask some questions, and see if I can get some answers here. And if y'all have questions, man, send them in so we can ask our brain trust here, man. We got a lot of years of experience right here. Probably what I want to say, maybe 60 years of experience, 20,
Easy.
about 20, 30 each. All right.
I got
So check this out.
close to 40.
Yep.
And I got
so
22.
about 60 years. Yeah, there we go. 62. We got 62 years experience right here. So, come on, let's use these brothers right now so we can get answers to the questions that we all have. Because I know as a regular citizen, man, I got questions to ask, and I'm about to ask them right now just for y'all. So let me just jump right in. Here's question number one. And by the way, I just want to let people know, most of some of my questions are coming as a civilian, and then some are coming as a researcher because I did write a book on policing in America. I think DVP probably mentioned it. It's called The Good, the Bad, and the Blue. And you can get a copy on Amazon. It's gonna have some of these same questions and some of these same thoughts that I'm about to ask our experts right here. All right. So first question I want to ask y'all is about this. Talk about for policing, physical training, emotional training, and procedural training. Because my question is, I want to know what kind of work is put in, because we all know that police get trained, but I don't think people understand the sectors of that training. How is that training broke down? And I think most of us realize, or most of the civilian population know that there's at least 6 to 9 months of training. And we want to know, listen, how are those sectors broke down when it comes to physical, when it comes to emotional, and when it comes to procedural training? So DVP, talk to me about that first, and then we'll go to Joe.
Hey, I'm gonna hurt your feelings. In Georgia, it's only 12 weeks.
Ooh.
And when I went, it was only 6 weeks.
Ooh.
That's probably the best in shape you're gonna ever find an officer, because now they make them run every other day while they're in the academy. But once they leave, there's no more physical training. Too much of the training is broken down, in my mind, into unusable things. Like, we teach search warrants and affidavits in the academy, but there are very few rookies who will ever use that. That's more so for small departments, super small, because ain't none of them going to use that. But when you talk about the hands-on stuff, even firearms, they get 40 hours. Self-defense, they get 40 hours. They get more time doing other things that, to me, aren't as important as, we don't spend a lot of time dealing with people who are mentally incapacitated. We don't spend a lot of time dealing with people who are deaf. I've been trying to figure out why we don't teach some form of sign language in the police academy. Because if they can't talk, I mean, we know that there are people out there who cannot speak. But the average police officer, when he runs across them, this is a no person, because they can't hear or they can't talk, so they can't respond adequately. But if they're doing this and nobody understands them, the police going to take it as something different because they've never been trained for this. But we'll train them on all these other little cute things that have no bearing on anything. But yeah, it's 12 weeks now here in Georgia. Wow. Go ahead, Mo.
So
go ahead, Joe.
Wait, before you answer, Joe, I just want to add, I'm gonna add some commentary as we go through this, because I had a friend, and this is to DVP's point about the sign language or whatever you need to do, and y'all can talk about this one too later. I'd like to understand it, but I had a friend who was having a seizure. He was in his car with his windows all rolled up. He was having a seizure. The police, and he was at a gas station. He was parked at a gas station. He went to get gas, windows rolled up, and he started having a seizure in his car. About 6 police cars showed up, and they started giving him commands, and he couldn't follow them because he was having a seizure. So in the end, what they ended up doing was busting the window and dragging him out the car. He got scarred up because of the glass. He got beat up because they didn't know why he wasn't following the commands and the rules, and ended up in the hospital, and he had to obviously file a lawsuit associated with that event. I can't even think of wanting to be in that situation, but if y'all want, man, we can talk about that, because I'm interested in your thoughts on that type of situation, because that's just got to be experience, I guess. But go ahead, Joe, if you want to chime in on that one, man. Let's talk about that.
Let me Man, there's so much to unmask on that one. Um, for us, it's a probationary period is 18 months. 9 months in the academy, then you're 9 months on the street. For me, it was a year. They extended it to 18 months. The first 9 months, you run every day. They don't they don't play. But again, we've changed how we train our people. And let me tell you what happened. In the academies, it used to be, in fact, it was called Welcome to the Gym Day. The first day in in the gym, I mean, you come in you don't have any of your right equipment, and they send you through hell day. They call you all kind of names, and I had my first day. I had two people drop. I wasn't dropping, and they called me everything but a child of God. And eventually, you learn that what was happening, they were preparing you for what was going to happen in the street. I mean, because if you, and it, I don't know if I know what's happened to me. I've had people curse me out, but I've had to keep my cool. And let me digress a minute. The difference in how we teach these kids and what we learned was two things. The first one was by the nature of what we do, we have to give the citizens respect. Now, let me give you the flip side of that. A lot of these young officers think that by the virtue of them having a uniform, they get respect. And that's absolutely wrong. You have to respect the citizens right off the bat, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not, you have to do that. And that's where we're falling down. That's point number one. Point number two is that this whole mystique of I've got a uniform, I'm Superman. Man, I took the S off my chest a long time ago. I leap tall buildings and sing a bomb, but I got my behind whipped a couple of times. Now, I'm sure it's never happened to DVP, but I've lost a couple of fights. I mean, some good ones too. But I'd be a liar if I told you I won every fight. That's absolutely not true for me. I wish I had, but now,
Polyester makes you crazy.
hey man, look, but I will say this for us, we had this, there was a signal for us, it was called a 10-1. 10-1 meant officer needs assistance. And everybody in the district would go. Everybody on the zone would go because that officer needed help. Now, once you get there and you calm things down, then you go back to what you're doing. But again, let me go back to the very base point. Our police officers are not being trained that A, they've got to have a thick skin. B, everybody's not, you don't have to be respected because you got a uniform, but you have to give respect irregardless and irrespective of what the situation may rise.
We have to be the professional. And it's crazy. One of the guys who's a major now, he called me. He said, "Bill, you was good at trainer, except for one something." I said, "What?" He said, "You never taught us how to deal with innocent people." And that made me change my whole training program because there is no training for dealing with innocent people. We're trained by nature to believe that everybody's guilty, and so it's hard to, if the training doesn't adapt to that we treat people, as Joe was saying, with respect initially and let them become guilty. Most time we get there, it's what most police assume. And, it's, don't get me wrong, it's not as bad as it used to be. But, in one scenarios, my favorite scenario is pulling over a stop car. We run a car, the tag comes back stolen. You cut your lights on. If the car
Felony
stops,
stop.
But if you're a veteran, if the car stops and you cut your light on, chances are the car ain't stolen. I ain't saying nobody can trick you, but people who steal cars generally don't stop for cops. But we train cops that this is a felony stop, and then they got to pull their gun out and do a felony stop. We don't give them an alternative. Not here anyway. I don't know if y'all give an alternative in Chicago, Joe. But as you get into the system, you realize a lot of stolen vehicle claims are false anyway. The car has been recovered, it just ain't been took out of the system. But we don't teach the officer to use common sense. If they run, clearly it's a stolen car. You keep it up as a felony stop. Do everything you're supposed to do. But if they stop, and like most innocent people, And this happened with a preacher and a police chief's wife. They tried to get out the car and explain what was going on because they were innocent. They didn't know what criminals do. And the cops ended up in a physical altercation because nobody taught them how innocent people respond to things. And it caused me to change my whole training program.
Wow. Yeah. So all right, let me go to the next question. So this is I'm asking this one really when we think about Derek Chauvin and what happened to George Floyd. So it's about FTO leadership. All right, because Derek Chauvin was an FTO. So two questions kind of here. One is what kind of additional training or specifications do you need to become an FTO? And is the FTO ultimately responsible for the people that he or she trains?
You want me to start off?
Go ahead, Joe.
All right. So for those who don't know, FTO means Field Training Officer. So the Field Training Officer is the officer that takes the recruit who's on probation and trains them for a set amount of period. They're the ones who allegedly are supposed to weed out separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, here's a problem with that. I would challenge you to go find in the department how many people have flunked out of the FTO program. Probably nowhere near what should have flunked out, but that's in and of itself. The other issue is, are they ultimately responsible? And I would tell you, yes. There have been cases where an officer involved shootings that the field training officer has been called to testify as to the character of this officer after 5 or 6 years. Because just as in anything else, you provided the mold. So therefore, it's what did you mold? How did you mold this person to be or to become what he or she has become? So in most cases, that officer, that FTO, can be called up to at least 6-7 years after that person comes off of his training cycle, his or her training cycle.
And that goes into the buddy system. Here it's crazy. I had 3 people flunk out of FTO. 3 that I can just name. Out of those 3 of them made sergeant.
Oh my
What
God.
does that tell you? God. And for us, I'm gonna say it's a little different. Well, for us, the FTO, part of them do what Joe said, but if you get reassigned to a different unit, you have to go through the FTO program again. So if you leave the jail and say you come to service division, you have to go to FTO program. You have to go through 2 weeks of FTO, 1 week with another supervisor to make sure that the FTO training is going good. 3 people who made sergeant failed my portion, and they got promoted to sergeant and were put over me within 1 year. So you can't pass to be in this unit, but now you're my supervisor. The FTO system. When I became a trainer and I went through instructor liability, and I told everybody when you call me, my job ain't to pass everybody. My job is to weed out the bad people first. Those that deserve it will pass. I don't have to try to pass anybody. But when I see chinks in the armor, I'll give them extra work. But if they can't do it, I can't pass them because, as Joe said, I got to go to court. And they're going to ask me, if you knew this person wasn't good, why did you pass them? There's nothing I can say because we have to do paperwork, which is how it's crazy. They stopped sending people to me because I'm meticulous with my paperwork. This person is not suited to be here. I ain't saying they ain't suited to be a sheriff. They're just not suited to work here. But other people are like, well, can you just go on and what you can do as a supervisor, you can say that I'm not a good training officer. But no, I'm not going to pass them because there is that liability. And that's one of the things that when people are looking at who's to blame, look at the FCOs, look at the supervisors, follow the paperwork. It ain't no different than law. Follow the paperwork, not the person, follow the paperwork. Because if somebody knew and didn't do anything, that's when you get them class action and RICO suits because all y'all conspired to make this person get here. Not me.
And let me add this
so
to
Joe,
you.
wait, Joe, before you start. let me ask this question, Joe, before you start. Hold on one second. So DVP,
Mhm.
in the case with Chauvin, who was responsible for decommissioning him from his position because he was inadequate? Who would have been responsible in that case?
Well, I don't know
Sergeant?
their system, but whoever did his evaluations, if they do
No,
evaluations like most agencies do, his sergeant. But see, like with us, in in totality, my supervisor became lieutenant because my pay was on par with lieutenants, and I was kind of above sergeants. Even though sergeants technically outranked me, I outpaid them. So, but as Joe said, whoever it is I asked to, would it be a sergeant, lieutenant, or a captain, that's who is responsible because they get to see the tape. They see the tape. If they don't do it, they're negligent.
Again, I will say this to you. According to every military or paramilitary operation, patrolmen, corporals answer to a sergeant. So, in that vein, technically a sergeant. Now, how they play the trick on you is that they ain't got no sergeants or none available. So, but then again, let's talk about some real skullduggery and some real, as I call it, shenanigans. If we start talking about bad officers, bad FTOs, bad anything, you have to look at their supervisors. Because now, if you really do a dig down or deep dive, you'll see the corruption in the whole promotional system. And that's across the board. That's across this country. Promotions are foul. I've often argued that the promotions in the police department or law enforcement should be along the same lines or similar to in the military. Now, while the military is not great, it's not as bad as law enforcement because you can get little Johnny's uncle or little Johnny's third cousin on his cousin's side. Uh, Best example I got. Look at them two numbskulls out of New York who were doing hits for the mob. They went protected because their relatives were policemen. They were on board with other police brass. So when we start looking at why things are the way they are, you got to look at the top. When you want to see corruption, go start at the top.
Yeah, and I'll say I just want to add to that because I've been in several different spaces and there was corruption in just about every space or favoritism, whatever you want to call it. I've been in the military, I've been in corporate space, and even from a educational perspective, and all of them had some type of or some form of corruption. And I'll just leave it at that. But it's no surprise if you run into that. Guarantee you.
Well,
All right, so I
can
want to. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
let me
Joe.
I got to add one thing. Let me put this in perspective for everybody that's listening. 1619 is when the first alleged ships landed here with the first slaves that we can document. So from 1619 to 1964-65, our behinds weren't allowed to own property, weren't allowed to vote, couldn't even design or have a design on our future. So from let's say 64 to what 2023, now we're getting infused with all this rights and these knowledges. But in our lifetime, just in our lifetime, gentlemen, we've just been allowed to vote. So do you think they're going to, after 400 or 300 years, whatever it is, they're going to turn this game over to you that quick?
Yeah, no, that's a fact. So here's the next question I want to ask. And it's basically about the corporate structure in policing. I got a story in my book, The Good, the Bad, and the Blue, about an officer who, for all intents and purposes, let's just say he was the good officer, and then he got assigned to a group of officers who were up to no good. These guys would beat people up, they would steal items from their homes, they would do all kind of corrupt things that this good officer didn't want to get involved with, but yet he was on their team. So what they decided to do when they found out that he would only go so far, they decided to put him in the lookout position every time they went to do a heinous crime or do something that wasn't particularly allowed by the police division. So they make him look out. They go do their dirty work. But this guy was taking notes all the time. So after a certain point, he just couldn't take it no more. So he went to through his reporting structure and started telling people. Well, it got to a point where somehow these guys got the information that he was reporting on them, and they started to terrorize this dude. They put rats on his car to call him a rat. They did all kind of things. And so the main question I guess I want to get to is for police assignments. When you get partnered with a team or a group or something, can you get that changed? You can go first, DVP.
You can, but most of us get in it. We want that. We want that upward mobility, and that's where you have to challenge your integrity. What is it that you're willing to put up to have this? I say, one of the street suppression teams I got put on was with a bunch of corrupt officers, and I told the guy, I said, hey, y'all need to move me, but the report is done because what you're doing is illegal. And he was like, you're here now. I said, no, y'all are a police agency. I'm assigned to this task force. I'm a sheriff. I don't answer to nobody here. I respect the chain of command, but in every document I read, sheriffs outrank police. So you being a lieutenant don't mean shit to me. What you're doing is dead wrong. And the sheriff said, what happened? I said, Sheriff, they making an illegal arrest. She said, what did you do? I said, it's in all my reports. It's in every report that I got. Every one that I saw. I said, because I can't stop them because there's 7 of them. I said, but I documented everything, and I let the news people know that all these arrests are illegal. When the judge called me and asked me, I told him why. So when the guy stayed, yeah, you can stay and do your little part, but you have to know how to do it so that you can be safe and effective. I would never, if I wasn't who I was, I wouldn't tell nobody how right was I was doing, but I would keep documentation. And every day I got home, I'd just write in my journal and do my email and send it to somebody who I trusted in the media or in public relations to get it out there. Because I wouldn't want to be, as Joe was talking about earlier, I wouldn't want to be the known whistleblower. I want to dilute the process back to me. But when the Bureau of Investigation come and ask questions, I'm talking up then, because everything can come back to me. But I don't think I would. If I was normal, I wouldn't want to be known out front because there is a risk. You do have a lot to lose when they know you are the whistleblower.
You got any thoughts on that, Joe?
I don't disagree with any of it. The story that you're talking about, I happen to know. I happen to know that story. Oh yeah. I happen to know how true it is. I have also had a conversation with a guy named Serpico, and there's people here. If DVP wants, I'll get her on the show. A girl named Shannon Sharp, a female from Chicago. You can look her up. She blew the whistle on a big narcotics line here, and she had to leave the city. Look up Shannon Sharp, and I'll get her. DVP, you tell me when, I'll get her.
Yeah. So Joe, if you know the story, the officer's name is Joseph Crystal.
Yeah.
Baltimore Police Department.
I know the story.
Yeah, I wrote about it in my book because it was interesting. Police against police. I had, we don't hear about that much, but it happens. Within the department.
Well, again, the reality is that for particularly in the South and some of the Eastern and Western groups, when we talk about organized crime infiltrated law enforcement years ago. Years ago. I mean, these guys aren't stupid. Again, the 2 guys out of New York, they were doing hits. For God's sake.
Wow.
And as you said, it's insane how some of the things go. But like I said, I testified in 3 cases. And again, I was told, hey man, this ain't gonna be good for your career. This ain't gonna be good for your career. Because 2 of the people had major pull. And they did everything they could to. I even had to go to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations because they had a whole list of things they wanted to arrest me for because a whole group of people all of a sudden had evidence against me. But luckily, I was a great bond. But it's like, yo, y'all can do what y'all want to do. If you're gonna arrest me, because I know what the statute says for illegal arrest. And had I not just been such a studious person and semi-rebellious, I would have buckled under the pressure. But they were threatening to lock me up. They were threatening all kind of stuff. But it was like, you can lock me up. It ain't gonna change my evidence. Well, you did this. No, I didn't. Yeah, we got witnesses that say you did this. Hey, well, let's go to court and do it. Because I learned to keep track of my dates. There's nothing like having an alarm system that shows when you come and go home. There's nothing like having cameras that show you come and go home. So when people try to say you were somewhere else, you know, they asked me for my proof that I was innocent. I said, I ain't got to prove I'm innocent to y'all. Y'all got to prove I'm guilty. But it's like, you did this. I was like, hey, whatever. All because I told on two of the people who were, because the third one was just a middleman, but two of them were high people. They had major juice and major money. And they just kept coming. It's like, hey, whatever. The great thing, though, about being a whistleblower, once you can get that status, is you become a superhero because they can't touch you. You can't get suspended. You can't do nothing because everything is retribution at that point. You pretty much just walk around being an asshole because you can't do anything. Oh, we're gonna change your shift. Oh, that's retaliation. That's against the rules. That's against the rules. You can't retaliate against me. I'm gonna be on day shift as long as I want to. And you know, but it's just it's hard though. It's hard if you don't know what it is. If you're just doing the right thing and you ain't talking to nobody or know who to talk to, it can be a career ender. And in certain places, it can be a life ender because some of these people take this. You know, as I told you earlier, the police has long ago been infiltrated by the KKK, by the Crips, by the Blood, by a lot of major gangs. This is how they do business. We're probably the only group that ain't figured out how to do business for us, to make it work for us. Which is why I stayed a cop, because I learned how to tell people how we can make it work for us. So when people call me, well, you got to do this. Yeah, it's going to take a little effort, but this is what you got to do. More of us need that. More of us have to step up and learn this system and become a part of it so that we can direct people in the right way, which is why, you know, I love Joe. Even when he disagreed with me, he's still giving me good direction because we need this. It wasn't built for us, but once we learn it, we can make it work for us. We just got to learn how to use it for us. And it's like, hey, I can tell you, you see the white guy who shot the kid and who just shot the kid, how he's out of jail.
Ralph Y'all.
I can tell you, I walked two murderers out because I had them turn themselves at me, and we turned them into the judge. But I knew they weren't guilty of murder. They just weren't murderers. They were drug dealers. The purpose of bail, when people get upset, is they don't understand. Bail is to make sure you come to court. If you turn yourself in, that's a predictor. And if you ain't done nothing else, like this dude, he kind of crazy, but he don't have a criminal history. So even though he killed a man, he's not a threat to society because there's no history of that. You can't create a history. When we learn that it's easier to turn ourselves in, because then you don't need a bail. Judge, I'm gonna show up to court. I'm gonna show up. That's what I told him about the guy who was charged with murder. He been locked up 15 times. Drug deals. He ain't never missed a court date. When he bonded out, he's never missed a court date. The judge said, do you trust him with a signature bond? I said, Judge, that's not my decision. All I can tell you is based on his record, he's never missed a court date. The judge say, well, do you have a problem with giving him a signature bond? Again, Judge, that ain't my decision. I called him and told him he had a warrant. He asked me to meet him at the courthouse, and here we are. Do you know I got a 3-day suspension for that? And I was like, why am I getting suspended? They was like, you vouched for a murderer. The man turned himself in to me. But the system is what it is. And it ain't built for us as a race. It ain't built for us as officers. Because we would try to tear each other down if somebody sees us, if we become too smart for the system.
Wow. All right,
Ooh.
man, that's great.
Man, it's 8 o'clock. We almost about to get in trouble.
All right, last question. I got one more question.
Last question. Mel, you still asking the last question. It ain't me. It's Mo. Go ahead.
Don't get mad at me, Mel. Sorry. All right, last question. No, the people need to know this, man. So what I want to ask each of you is about so the structure in the police department is usually regulated by state. I want to know why there's not federal oversight. There should be a federal oversight because when you talk about technology and medical, so if you talk about the FAA or the FDA, those are federally viewed systems. Policing has different regulations state to state. How come it's not federal? Guess
I'm
that's
gonna
my
answer
question.
because I see that question mark over Joe's head. Mo, you got a lot of misinformation there. The police aren't
A bunch.
only the federal police are police. So yeah, there's no need for us. We won't be the same. We should be, but yeah, it's not gonna happen like that because all state laws.
I think where you're going. I think a better way to look at that question is why isn't policing standardized? That might be the better question.
That's the best question.
That is the question. I know there's different laws. I know there's different laws in different states. So I'm not looking for the laws to be uniform, but just
They should be though.
the oversight to be uniform. Not the law.
Again, oversight is the wrong venue.
Ah.
The standardization of the profession. I mean, the doctors are a professional standard. They have oversight. Every
Attorneys
other
have-
group, attorneys, nurses, doctors, even morticians and beauticians have an oversight. But there's a standardization as opposed to an oversight, two different issues. So I think that's a show for another time, but I'm in for it.
3 weeks. Can we put that on the calendar? 3 weeks. Mo, get all your questions. Get all your questions. We're gonna come back and do this and follow up. And we're gonna run down the rabbit hole since Joe keep going for that rabbit hole. So just keep going for that rabbit hole. All right. Well, we're gonna get everybody give a quick outro and a parting comment so we don't get in trouble. Mo, go ahead and start since you're gonna be the moderator in 3 weeks.
All right. Yeah, no, I'm I just this is part of reason why I do this, man. I just want the civilian level people to get answers to certain questions. And the more you know about policing and what they need to do and what they need to adhere to, the better you can proceed in life and understand some of the stuff you see in the news is not always what it looks like. There's a backstory to it. And when you got experts that you can talk to, like we're talking to right now, you can get the answers you're looking for.
Joe?
Oh, me. I agree with Mo. No, I think that I think that we have to look going forward if we're going to solve this issue of policing, particularly in the Black community. We have to look at it some type of standardization. We have to look at bringing back some accountability on both sides of the aisle, not only for the police but the citizens. And there's got to be consequences for your actions. And I think that's what's happened in our society. We've gotten away from dealing with the consequences of our actions. And, everybody can't win. Everybody can't win first place, but everybody can pay a cost. And that's what I think is going to happen if we don't get this train back on track.
All right. And I just think that, ladies and gentlemen, if we learn how the system works and learn what we need to do, we can make it work for us. We just got to quit falling for the okie doke and people telling us that everything is racial and this. If we know it's racial, okay, we accept that. How do we fix it? We got to stop listening for problems. We got to start going for solutions. If it's not solution-based, what's the point? And the biggest thing that I just really got to get you guys to understand, and I hate to make this racist, but white people understand. You can't bring the dead back. They make it about money. They don't keep praying and hoping things gonna get better. They hit you where it hurt. They gonna get paid. They gonna get generational wealth from suing the cops. We're still kumbaya and holding hands and praying and crying. We gotta find a better way. What hurts them is money. They ain't gonna change nothing because we fall for the okie doke. We fall for the prayers. We fall for the, we gonna do better. It ain't gonna happen. We're gonna do this again in 3 weeks. If y'all got questions, if y'all know me, Mo or Joe, you can shoot questions. You can shoot questions me at Random Thoughts with DVP, and I'll give them to Mo because I want you guys to be educated on the system. I want you guys to stop speaking ignorantly when it comes to change, because sometimes your administrators let you talk ignorantly, knowing what you're complaining about is emotional. There's nothing they can do about your emotional wants. But when you give them a plausible something to do, like changing policy, like revisiting this those are things they can do within 30 days. But that's never asked for. Saying you want justice is the same as saying you want to be rich. You have to qualify. You have to qualify. Without qualification, you're peeing in the wind. But we're gonna do this again. I want to thank my two guests. We're gonna do this in 3 weeks. Mo gonna have everything. Me and Joe gonna try to be as ready as we can for whatever he bring. This is Random Thoughts with DVP, and as always, I enjoy it. If y'all want to know some more about this, like I say, inbox me. I try to answer the questions y'all ask me or have the guests that y'all need to have so that we can get this going. Next week, though, we're going to talk about why teachers are leaving the profession. I got 2 teachers who want to come on here, and they're going to discuss what happened last week. And again, it ain't money. Teachers not leaving because they're not getting paid enough. Teachers are leaving the reason cops are leaving. They just tired of this shit. They just tired. Money's not the answer. But we're going to do this again. Gentlemen, I appreciate you. Mel, I appreciate you, but fuss at Mo, because you know whose fault it was this time. Me and Joe was totally innocent. So until later, y'all know what it is, right? Peace, popcorn, and chicken grease, and my drink is gone.
Later.
Later.
Love.